In this video, we're going to talk about how to create additional prefabs that we can swap in and out on our tile grid here to create a pretty cool looking map. Let's start. We're going to create another prefab here. So anytime we're creating prefabs, anytime we're creating more than one type of thing, we typically want to create a folder structure to store it for us so that it's a little bit easier for us. It'd be insane. Maybe not. Maybe it would be too bad. I couldn't handle having all of my files in just my assets folder. So let's start here by creating a new folder. I'm going to call this prefabs because that's where I want to put inside of them. I'm going to put my prefabs. I'm going to drop my grass tile in there. I can just drag it in. You'll notice it shows up over here as well. I could also drag it in this way. All right, let's talk a little bit more about prefabs here. I can actually select these from my scene view. Just click in here and select them. And we did talk about before if we were to modify this here. So let's say I come in and I make this a different tile, make it my spawn square here. Come back, it actually changes all of them. It says the power of the prefab. Sometimes you want to see what that change is going to look like right here in the scene, and you can actually edit a prefab in your scene view. You'll actually notice that every single prefab in your scene hierarchy has this little arrow next to it off to the right. If you click on this, it'll actually bring you into a prefab mode. You know you're in prefab editor because everything else that's not part of this prefab, I can't click on it. Can't click on it now, but I can select this. You'll notice this is the tile that I happen to be selecting. This tile, I can select it because it's part of this specific prefab I selected. And if I change this, let's change it back to tile, we'll see that it changes everywhere else. So you can actually edit your prefab that way as well. And then to get out of your prefab editor, you just click this back arrow here. You may have noticed something. Remember, prefabs show up as blue in the hierarchy. You may have noticed that, oh, hey, our tile model is actually a prefab. This is true. And so we're going to actually be using this to create a bunch of different tiles. So let's actually de-prefab this. Sometimes you want to de-prefab something. You want to make it not a prefab so that if I edit this thing, I don't mess up that model everywhere. So we can actually right click on a prefab. There's this prefab menu. You can actually select unpack or unpack completely, and that'll make it no longer a prefab. And the nice thing about this is that this is now an independent game object. It's not using the original model anymore, so we can't accidentally change that. Let's come back into our scene here. Something that we sometimes want to do as well is have a prefab that is slightly different than all of the other ones. And if we edit it in the scene here, go ahead and select this grass tile, come down to my tile like this. If I modify this one, now only that one has changed. I'm going to select tile dirt. A little dirt tile in here. You'll notice just that one has changed. And if I were to come in and modify the prefab now, like this, let's choose our tile snow or snow tile. Sorry. You'll notice that one doesn't change. And this is because we have overridden. There's something called our overrides on our prefab. So if you select that prefab here that we've changed, we'll find that we have an overrides tab here. You can actually go in and see, oh, these are the changes that I've made on this object. You click on it, we have, it's not showing on the screen here. Let me scooch this over just a hair so you can see it there. If I select this drop down, and I click on this, we can actually see this is what the prefab source is. The source, the original, is actually using the snow tile. And my override, the thing that's different, is I'm using the dirt tile. And there's a couple things we can do here. I can select revert, which will change it back to the original so we don't have an override. I can also select apply to the prefab and it'll actually change all of the other prefabs to match. So these are different ways you can modify it. One other thing, you can also tell inside, if we go down into the tile itself, inside the prefab, you can actually see there's this blue mark off to the side in the inspector. This is telling us that this is a value that has been overridden. There was an override on it. I'm going to come back up here and I'm actually going to revert this back. I'm going to change this back to my grass tile. For some reason, I really like the grass tile. So we're going to stick with the grass tile here, just the plain tile, to apply it to all of them. What I want to do now, though, is I want to create a new tile that is going to be a path, that I can make a path down here for my game. I want to go ahead and make a path for that. So I'm going to select one of these tiles. I can click in. I want it to be this one here. It's off on the edge. I'm going to build a tile path out here. And if I come down into this, I'm going to change this to a dirt tile. Do a tile dirt like that. And I want to make this a new prefab. So I'm going to actually unpack this. I'm going to select my prefab. I'm going to go ahead and unpack completely. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this my dirt tile. I'm going to come over to my prefabs. I'm going to make this a dirt tile prefab now. The reason I've done this is now I can select this new tile. I want to actually make sort of this dirt path that tracks around my map to where my players' tower is going to be. Enemies are going to spawn in. They're going to come down this path, come around this little loop, and attack the tower. So I'm going to go and click over here in my grass tile. And if I right click, go down to prefab, one of the options is actually to replace this prefab. So I can click replace. I'm going to replace it with my, dirt tile here, not my grass tile. Boom, it replaces it. Sweet. There's another way we can do this. Over here, select this tile. We see the prefab we're using in the inspector. I can actually drag that tile in. And this is where things get really useful. By multi-select, I'm going to hold down Control while I click. Maybe I misclick and I don't want that one. I can actually Control click again. On Mac, you're going to hold down Command to do this. And you can just click and keep clicking like so. And we're going to come through and we're going to build out this path. I'm going to build a little loop in here. And I want my path to end there. I can actually just make all of these a dirt tile. I have this nice quick map that I built here. And I can do this with a bunch of different tiles as well. Let's say I wanted to add in some trees. Let me select this tile here, come over to my inspector. I'm going to go ahead one more time, unpack this. I'm going to call this my tree tile like so. I'm going to go ahead and change the model here. There's a bunch of cool models. You can search them all. You can actually preview them. Again, here's this slider where you can preview the different models if you want to. I happen to know that I'm searching for my tree tile, not my snow cover, just a regular tile tree. I have this nice tree tile. Let me go ahead and make this a prefab. Drop that in there. Let me sprinkle a couple trees out on my map like this. Just swap that tree tile in. Now I got a couple trees. Let me add in some rocks now. Let me go ahead and I'm going to put a rock right here in the corner. All right, so I'm going to change this. Right click, prefab, go and unpack it, open that up, change this tile to my tile rock. There we go. We have this nice little rock we can use now. I'm going to rename this rock tile, create another prefab. Let's drop a rock here and here and here. Do one more here. Bring that rock tile in. Yeah, now my map's looking pretty nice. These rocks, a little too uniform. Let me take those. Let me rotate one 90 degrees so it's a little bit off. We'll move this one 180 degrees. Give us a little bit of variation on them. I'm actually not sure 180 degrees looks different. Let's go ahead and rotate on the y-axis here some 90 degrees. Not bad, not bad. And if we want to I accidentally click some things here. I was going to say, though, if we want to take a look at this a little bit better, we're in perspective mode. Our game's going to end up being isometric. We can actually click over here where it says persp. Sometimes your camera will get into a weird state. Click on this perf to enter isometric mode, which will actually make all of the models sort of be inside of a square view. It's what's called an orthogonal view. So our view will no longer have a camera that sort of flares out into a perspective, but instead keep things in this nice isometric view. So here's our perspective view. You can see how it's, fish, not quite fisheye lens, but we're sort of looking out and the camera's opening up as we go out. So as further away we get, the more we can see. Isometric sort of clamps everything into a nice grid and gives you this kind of 2D effect on it. So it's pretty nice. Play around with it. See if you can make some of your own tiles here and build out a cool looking map that you want to use for your game. I'm going to recommend increasing your map size to 15 by 15. You want to use odd numbers typically because then you'll have an actual center tile. Right now we don't have a center tile on our board. This one, you'll notice we have 5 tiles to the right on one side and 4 tiles to the left. It's not an actual center. So go with something like 11 by 11, 13 by 13, 15 by 15. 15 by 15 tends to be a pretty nice size map. Give it a shot. Can't wait to see what you make.